Hello, this is Greg with Reserve My Court, and today I want to talk a little bit about amenity rules and fees. This is the area of the site where you set up the rules that dictate how your users can make reservations at your club. This area is under club settings and then amenity rules and fees, and you'll notice to start off here I don't have any rules set up. So first thing I want to talk to you about a little bit is that if you do not set up any rules, then your users can make any reservation they want. So if you create a new club and you start with this blank slate, just know that right out of the gate, there's not going to be any restrictions on reservations. People can reserve for as long as they want, for as many courts as they want, for as far in advance as they want. They can make as many reservations as they want. There's just no limit to what they can do. So this area is where you start narrowing down what your users can do. And you should also know that the way this works is each rule you create is evaluated each time a reservation is made, and they're each evaluated independently of each other. So if I create 3 different rules, one that says maybe when the courts are open, and maybe another rule that says some certain close times, or maybe another rule about how far in advance, what the system's going to do is each time a user makes a reservation, that reservation is going to be checked against each rule. So it would look at rule 1, does it pass or fail? Look at rule 2, does it pass or fail? Go through each one and look to see if it passes or fails. And if it fails, the first time it fails any single rule, that reservation process is going to be halted, and the user is going to get a message about why their reservation is not being allowed. So again, right out of the gate, no rules, no restrictions. So what I want to talk about today in this video is really the general concept of the rule types that we have, and I'll go through what those types are, what they do, and how they're intended to be used. And then I'm going to do an individual video for each rule type, the actual detailed setup of each rule type. So we're not going to go into the details of each setup in this video because it's going to just get too long, but let's go through what each rule type is first and what it's intended to do. So to create a new rule, you're going to click this Add Rule button, and then you're going to get a screen. The very first thing you're going to be asked to do is select a rule type. And this is the rule types we're going to talk about. So let's start with an advance rule. An advance rule sets how far in advance reservations can be made. And you'll have 2 options there. One is a sort of a maximum distance into the future, and one is a minimum. So you can also, most clubs are saying, hey, you can't reserve more than a certain time in advance. They might limit you to the next 7 days, the next 10 days. But you also could say, in addition to doing that, you could also say you can't reserve courts for the next 12 hours or for the next. So you may force your users to reserve a certain distance into the future and also limit how far in the future they can reserve. So that's what the point of that rule is. And really, I want to talk about why we have this rule. The reason for this rule is for clubs that have teams. Those teams may not get their schedules. It might be only about 2 or 3 weeks in advance of the season starting, and they may not know when their home matches are going to be until they get that schedule. And so you want to make sure those dates are available for those team captains or for you as the admin to make those reservations. And so if you allow your general membership to just make reservations any distance into the future they want, you may find by the time you get your schedule and you're ready to sit down and make your reservations, those dates are already taken. And so to avoid that, you can limit your general membership to reserving only, say, 7 days in advance. And then once those schedules come out 2 or 3 weeks in advance, you're assured that those spots will be available for you to reserve. And then as the time rolls forward and you get to within the window that your users or regular users can reserve, they'll fill in the gaps around those events that you need to make sure you have booked. So that's what an advanced rule type does. The block rule, honestly, we're thinking about changing the name of this because it does confuse people to something maybe like a slot rule. But the concept here is this. Generally, without any rules, I can go in and make a reservation anytime I want. And I'm going to go try that right now. And what I mean is I can kind of free form like any start time I want. So let's say I'll go in here at like some random time, like 7:15 and go to 8:30. I could do this. I'm not going to complete that reservation, but I could. If if you created block rules, those blocks would show up on the schedule, and those reservations that users make have to match those times exactly. In fact, the blocks will show up on the schedule, and you click those to make your reservation rather than just freeform draw it in. So this came about as clubs said, hey, look, in the evenings, people would start reserving these random times. They might start at 6:30 and go to 8:30, and we can only, if people do that, we kind of only can get 2 reservations in on each court in the evening. We'd really prefer them start exactly at 6 and go to 7:30, and 7:30 to 9, and 9 to 10:30. So that's what this rule does for you. It would allow you to create these specific blocks of time that the user must follow when they make a reservation. So let me go back over to our club settings and our rules again, and I'll show you the next rule types that we have. So after block, we've got a cancellation rule. In a minute, I'm going to talk about the quantity rule. And if you create a quantity rule, which is limiting how many reservations people can make, you'll also need to set a cancellation rule. This dictates when somebody can actually cancel their reservation. So maybe you've set it to, up to an hour before the start of the reservation or something like that. You'll allow people to cancel that reservation. You can set it to whatever you like. But if you don't have a cancellation rule and you do restrict the number of reservations people can make, really all they need to do is after they reserve the court and they get to the court and they know, hey, nobody else is going to come reserve this court now because the start time's already gone by, they'll just cancel that reservation. And they really have unlimited, once they do that, they really have access to unlimited reservations. So you want to make sure you use that cancellation rule anytime you're using a quantity rule as well. A closure rule is something like in the middle of the day. So not so much your open and close times. We've got another rule for that. But the closure rule is something in the middle of the day. It could be like your watering schedule, maybe for clay courts where you're closed every other day for an hour, or maybe you're doing maintenance on the courts for a few days or something like that. You could create a closure rule and just close down those specific times that's done. The concurrent rule is a lot of clubs say to us, hey, look, we don't mind if people make, say, a couple reservations a day, one in the morning and then one maybe in the afternoon or evening. We just don't want them reserving 2 courts at the same time. And so that's kind of what this concurrent rule does. It limits, you can set how many concurrent amenities a user can have reserved at the same time. So you could just set that to 1 if you said you can only make 1, or maybe it's 2, whatever you want, you can set it there with a concurrent rule type. Duration is a pretty simple one. How long can reservations last? You can have both a minimum and a maximum. So you can say reservations must be at least an hour long, or you don't have to do that, but you could also then say reservations can't be longer than an hour and a half or 2 hours, whatever you want. You have the flexibility to create that rule and set it to however you like. Fee, the fee rule type, not many of our clubs use this because most of our facilities are private clubs, but if you do have like a public facility or you're charging fees, or maybe you charge fees to certain types of members when they make a reservation, you can do that here. You can create a fee for the reservation time. Open close is really the general open and closing times for your courts. So you can set what time the court's open, what time they close. You can do that by day of the week. You can do it by amenities. If different amenities open and close at different schedules, you can do that. Quantity we talked about a little bit before, but it's exactly what it sounds like. You can limit how many reservations a user can make, and you can do that by the day or the week, and you can set specific times. You can, if you may not care about certain times of the day where you're not that busy, but in other times you may want to limit somebody to only 1 reservation. So it's things like that you can do with the quantity rule. And the last one is the walk-up rule. This is kind of a special closure type rule. Really, it does prevent reservations from being made. But it's meant to show users that, hey, that court is there, but it's first come, first serve. It's a walk-up court. We don't take reservations for it, but it will still show up on the schedule, and it'll be blocked off and just say walk-up only. So those are all the different kinds of rule types we have. I do want to make a couple of special notes here, specifically about this quantity rule and the advance rule. We have a lot of clubs who are saying, hey, we're super busy. We have people, almost fighting to get court time. As soon as that opens up for them to reserve, they're scrambling to it, and I get calls about, hey, so-and-so's always getting the courts. I don't get the courts. And so there's a lot of demand on some of these courts. And what I see clubs doing, I think that's kind of a maybe not a best practice, is they're using this advance rule to try to handle this. When really that doesn't change the demand for the courts. It only, in fact, it might make it worse. When you limit your users down to only a few days in advance, then what you're doing is you're putting a lot of pressure on them to make sure they get those reservations in as soon as they open up. And because there's not a wide window to work in, everybody's trying to get that second day or the third day or the day that you've allowed them to reserve out to. And I think it just causes a little bit of an artificial pressure, honestly, on the reservation system. It also, I think, leads to people making reservations that they don't end up using, and they don't go in and cancel them sometimes, which makes your problem even worse. There's such a competition to get those slots that they go get them even if they're not 100% sure they're going to use them, and then they forget to go in and cancel them. So I would caution about that advance rule, trying to use that too tightly. But I would say this: if you're under high demand for your courts, you really need to think about creating some of these quantity rules. You can limit how many reservations people can make per day or per week, and if you've got more demand than you have slots available, you really do need to start enforcing some type of limitation on how many reservations people can make, because you may end up with the same group of people always getting the courts, and obviously that leads to frustration from your members. It leads to phone calls to us and phone calls to you, and so anything we can do to make that experience a better one, we want to try to help along the way. So if you have any questions about any of these rule types, or how to do them, or best practices, or what we see other clubs doing, please give us a call. You can always reach me. That number is 678-880-9042. And of course, you can always reach me by email. That's greg@reservemycourt.com. Keep an eye out for other videos about each one of these specifically. So if you have questions about any one of these types of rule types and how to set them up, I'm going to have other videos for that. So keep an eye out for that. Thanks again for your time today, and hope you enjoy our system. And if you have any questions, please give us a call.